To Syria now, and what's being called another horrifying massacre, reportedly boosting today's death toll to 125 people, more than half of them at a security checkpoint in the besieged opposition stronghold of Homs. The European Union is fighting the intense bloodshed with tough new sanctions, freezing key government assets, while the Syrian regime insists reform is on the way, touting a new constitution it says has just been overwhelmingly approved. Our senior international correspondent, Nick Robertson, is monitoring what's going on in nearby Beirut. Nick, let's start with the situation in Homs. What is the Red Cross saying? What are they doing?
Wolf, the Red Cross has been in Homs all day working with the Syrian Red Crescent to try and get into Bab al-Amma, to try and get out those injured journalists, the Sunday Times photographer Paul Conroy and the French journalist Edith Bouvier. When the Syrian Red Crescent did get into Bab al-Amma, when they came out, they only had with them an old woman, a pregnant woman, and her husband. And according to activists, they say that there was about an hour lull in the shelling, and as soon as the Syrian Red Crescent vehicles left Bab al-Amma, the shelling resumed again with quite an intensity. And they say that the journalists, those international journalists in Bab al-Amma, don't feel comfortable leaving with the Syrian Red Crescent because they're not international. They're Syrian workers. They don't trust them. They want the International Committee for Red Cross in person in there to get them out, give them security, Wolf.
That constitutional referendum in Syria, is that really going to make a difference, Nick, or is it, as so many U.S. and European officials and many in the Arab world are saying, simply a joke?
It's not going to bring peace. The country is on the edge of civil war. It's not going to change that one iota. What it will do is, if you will, give Russia and China, Syria's backers, something to point to and say, look, this is a Syrian government that's supported by its people. The government says that 57.4% of the population turned out, just over 8 million people turned out, and of them, they say 89.4% voted yes. 1 in 10 voted yes. 9 out of 10 rather voted yes, 1 in 10 voted no. So the government's going to use this to say that they do represent the majority of people, and therefore the constitutional changes they're offering should be accepted by the opposition. The reality is the changes they're offering are not substantial, they're not meaningful to the opposition, so really it's a lot of window dressing, Wolf.
Yeah, that's what most of the officials I've spoken to, at least in Washington, are suggesting. Thanks very much, Nick Robertson, on the scene for us in Beirut. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is getting some heat for very briefly, stepping out of the world of diplomacy and making a prediction about U.S. presidential politics. The secretary spoke with our foreign affairs reporter Elise Labott as she wrapped up a tour of North Africa. They spoke about several controversial topics, including U.S. efforts to isolate the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad.
We have a lot of contacts, as do other countries, a lot of sources within the Syrian government and the business community and the minority communities. And our very clear message is the same to all of them. You cannot continue to support this illegitimate regime because it's going to fall. So be part of an opposition that can try to have a path forward that will, protect the rights of all Syrians.
But what about the message that the Syrian National Council is sending to those inside Syria? Do you think they're sending the right message?
Well, I think it's very difficult to form an opposition when you have no place to operate out of inside the country you're trying to change. In Libya, we had a very effective operation in Benghazi that gave us an address. We could deal with people. It represented Libyans across the country. We don't have that in Syria, and the Syrian National Council is doing the best it can, but obviously it's not yet a united opposition.
Let's talk about Afghanistan. The embassy's in lockdown right now?
Yes.
Employees not allowed to go anywhere?
No.
Okay. Listen, President Obama's apology has become very controversial. I mean, obviously Newt Gingrich and others have made this apology part of the campaign, but other experts in Afghanistan are saying this apology sends the wrong message. It gives the Taliban the excuse to go against us, to help use our enemies against us, and also a lot of these attacks that are happening against Americans, these horrible attacks, seem to be in retaliation for something the U.S. is taking responsibility for.
Well, I find it, somewhat troubling that our politics would inflame such a dangerous situation in Afghanistan. I well remember during the 8 years of President Bush's administration when something happened that was regrettable, unintentional, as this incident was. President Bush was quick to say, look, we're sorry about this. This is something that, we obviously did not mean to do. That's all that President Obama was doing, and it was the right thing to do, to have our president on record as saying, this was not intentional. We deeply regret it. And now we are hoping that, voices inside Afghanistan will join that of President Karzai and others in speaking out to try to calm the situation. It's deeply regrettable, but now it is out of hand and it needs to stop.
You said yesterday that President Obama will be reelected. It raised a lot of eyebrows. It's not really the Secretary of State to say anything about an election, and it seemed to be kind of a campaign statement.
Well, remember the context of it. I was asked whether the comments in the primary campaign, some of which have been quite inflammatory, represented America. And I represent America, and I know what happens in campaigns. I've been there, done that, and I know that things are said that are not going to be put into practice or policy. But I did think I needed to point that out to the audience. And probably, my enthusiasm for the president got a little out of hand.
Well, no political juices flowing there?
Well, I've tried to dampen them down. I've tried to have, them taken out in a, blood transfusion. But, occasionally they rear their heads.
Does that suggest maybe going back in at some point?
No, it just suggests that I want what's best for my country.
The Secretary of State speaking with our own Elise Labott in North Africa. Good interview.